Welcome to the Purpose to Create podcast with Natasha Wright, a business podcast for photographers and creativepreneurs who want to level up as they pursue their purpose to create. Lean in as we connect, inspire, and impact you as you build and grow your business.
I'm so hyped that you're here and listening to today's show. Today's guest is Tim Riddick, a Washington, D.C. area-based wedding photographer. The best wedding he will ever shoot will be the wedding that he is currently photographing. But more importantly, he is a husband, father, and friend. In today's episode, we're chatting all about the nitty-gritty of the business of photography. Hey, Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm kind of pumped to be a part of this podcast. I've listened to several episodes, and it seems like it's going to be a great benefit to those who are listening.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun. But more importantly, I'm talking about this taco party we're going to have afterwards to celebrate. So I can't wait to get down and dirty. But before we do, tell me a little bit about your journey.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's get into it, huh? So I am originally from Hawaii. Spent the vast majority of my life there. I left Hawaii to go to college at Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama. Graduated, went to the University of Georgia, got my master's, then went to the University of Central Florida where I was working on my PhD. Met a girl there. She moved to Virginia. After some mild excursions, I ended up in Virginia chasing a girl. Luckily, we are married with 3 crazy, psychotic kids. But yeah, it's been an awesome journey. You know, before I ever got into photography, I really wanted to be a filmmaker. That was always my passion as a kid. I remember my dad, who worked crazy hours at the hospital. My mom was a social worker. So it was a, typical Cosby family before Cosby got creepy. So my dad, every Sunday, my dad would go down to like the local Blockbuster and rent like 5 or 6 movies. And we would just sit around the house all day Sunday and just watch movies. So that's kind of where my passion for filmmaking kind of came from. And long story short, I went to college. I got I thought my dream job at DreamWorks Studios as an assistant film editor, and the downturn of the economy kind of caught me sideways. I thought I was living the dream and ended up getting let go from my job when the economy went sideways. I had a friend who was getting married. He was like, "Hey, Tim, you always have a camera with you. Will you photograph my wedding?" I was like, dude, that's not what I do. I'm a photojournalist. I'm not a wedding photographer, because I thought wedding photography was lame. And he convinced me to shoot his wedding. I told him I would refuse payment because I thought I'm not a wedding photographer. I don't know anything about this venue of photography. I was like, but you can pay me in beer. So he paid me a case of beer, and I caught the bug, and I haven't looked back. That was that was 10 years ago. I wasn't really doing it serious till about 7 years ago. So now I'm full time at it.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So talk a little bit about that transition from full-time to full-time. I mean, your full-time 9 to 5 to your full-time entrepreneurship.
Well, so this is kind of crazy. So this kind of goes back a little ways prior, even before going to photography full-time. And this isn't something like I share this in a lot of my talks at like conferences that I speak at and that I teach at. Is before I ever got into photography, I had gone through some like boneheaded things as a young adult. When I was in college, my dad used to say, "Hey, I don't care what you're doing, where you're going. I just need to know where you're at." Right. And this is so like I was on a wrestling team. I was going to school full time. I was working full time. I had a girlfriend. I just could not for the world of me adhere to my dad's one rule of just letting him know where I was at. So after about like the 10th time of him telling me that, I had come home from like work. It was like 2 a.m. All my stuff was like packed up on the doorstep. I packed up all of my belongings, which was at the time was a 13-inch TV, a DVD player, and a bag of clothes. I put it in my Honda Civic, and on my last trip to the doorstep, because I was too proud to tell my dad or to knock on the door and ask my dad for another chance. I was too I guess, bullheaded.
Yeah.
I went to go pick up that last trash bag of clothes, and my dad cracked open the door and he said, Tim, he was like, you'll never succeed in the real world. You have no idea how hard it is. And then he closed the door.
And that was it?
That was it. That was the last thing my dad said to me. I was 18. And so a large part of that kind of resentment, I guess, kind of fueled me.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did it fuel me, what it did was it caused me to do some things differently. It actually brought something out in me that I had no idea was even really there. So like, I didn't have any place to go. I didn't have any place to stay. So I slept in my car for 6 to 7 weeks. I was pretty much homeless. I had pretty much reached rock bottom at that point at 18 years old. So what I ended up doing was, I got a gym membership. I would wake up in the morning. I would go to the gym so I could shower and brush my teeth.
Mm-hmm.
I would go to wrestling practice. I would go to school all day. I would go to work, and then I would go to like the farthest gas station away, and I would sleep in my car. Mm-hmm. And then I would do it all over again so I can earn enough money to get my first apartment. And I'll never forget it. Like, it was like my first apartment was $450 a month. I was living in Columbus, Georgia. But what ended up happening was it taught me that resentment and that resourcefulness, and being homeless taught me, like, with my back against the wall, how to figure things out on my own. I don't know if I hadn't gone through what my dad put me through, or what I put myself through, because I'd be 100% honest, I was more responsible than my dad was. But like, I took that resentment and I just hustled. Man, I hustled for a long time. I went to school to pretty much to prove my dad wrong.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because I wanted to get a degree. It wasn't something that I was striving for, or something I fell into. And then I just kept going to school because I didn't know what else to do. I'm gonna prove you wrong, Dad. So like, this is a long story to kind of tell you, like, or to kind of share with you that when I got let go, when I thought that I was at my dream job, and I got let go, I got pink slipped on set with 423 other people. Again, I hadn't saved any money. I hadn't done anything like what you're supposed to do when you're making a decent amount of money. I had to figure it out, So going from a 9 to 5 and working and making great money to not having a paycheck coming in, I had to get really resourceful with my income. Like anyone, I went back to, like, I waited tables and I bartended for a long time, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And then when I was starting to transition from filmmaking to photography,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I shot that first wedding, I caught the bug, and I was like, well, who else will let me shoot their wedding, kind of thing. And it just kind of put that back in my mind of being like, being homeless in my car and having to be resourceful and have to figure out what I was going to do next. So what I ended up doing was I went to Craigslist. I went to the gigs ad. I searched weddings, and every individual that was looking for a wedding photographer, it didn't matter if it was $200 or $2,000. I just replied. I was like, hey, I just emailed them. I was like, I'm a new photographer in town. I'd love to photograph your wedding. What would it take for me to get you to say yes to me? So I just assumed every email that I sent out that the answer was already yes. They were just waiting for the question. So that's kind of how I started the transition. I went from shooting one wedding on Halloween for a case of beer to getting my first wedding for $500 to getting my second wedding for $1,500. My third wedding, I kind of overshot my coverage there, and my third wedding was $2,800. And I don't know how people or why people were trusting me, but I had the work ethic, and I wanted to prove to them that I could do. I wanted to prove to myself more so than them that I could continue to take on these jobs and be everywhere all at once. So then, like, you look at that. That was my first year. I shot maybe 6 weddings. My second year, I shot, I want to say 18. My third year, I shot 48 weddings. So I photographed 48 weddings that year. And dude, I was all over the place. I was And I think the one moment where I realized I had kind of made it, although I don't really feel like I've ever made it, is when I had someone from Costa Rica email me and be like, hey, we're getting married in Costa Rica in Tamarindo. Our budget's $8,000. I'd love for you to come and shoot our wedding. And I was like, what? Like mind
blown.
Like not even like seriously, like this is like 3 years into this. And here someone's willing to pay me $8,000 to come to Costa Rica and then fly me to Costa Rica and put me up for a week, feed me with their family. And I went surfing every day. I ate at this little French bakery. I had no clue I just said yes. I just said yes to everything. So like it got to the point to where it just began to steamroll. And then like, I want to tell people that like it was easy, but it wasn't. Like for every one yes that I had 10 no's.
Right.
So like I just kept trying. I just kept asking. And I didn't really get caught up in the whole social media. I didn't use social media really as a strong tool initially, but I used word of mouth so I had one friend tell another friend tell another friend. So when someone was looking for a wedding photographer, I was one of the first people that came to their mouth, because like not only was I crushing the weddings that I was at, I was making friends at the weddings. I was talking to grandmas and uncles and aunts. Like if they had 5 minutes, I wanted to share how passionate I was about this photography thing.
Right.
Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer to let you know how I got from point A to point B. And I'm still not quite at point B, so I'm still striving to get there. But yeah.
No, and that's what the show is all about. It's really about really unveiling what it really means to be in business as an entrepreneur, and really showing that you can't jump from A to Z or 100, 0 to 100 real quick. It doesn't really work like that. There are so many steps in between, and so many lessons learned, and so many challenges that you really have to go through before you can even feel like you're breaking the ice or some type of breakthrough in your business as an entrepreneur. I share some similar experiences as you were talking, and being 10 years in as a wedding photographer as well too. I really feel like you have to take what you can get until you get to where you're trying to go.
Oh, 100%. And sometimes you realize that when you're getting to where you've gone and where you're trying to go, that there's somewhere else to go as well. So there's never a goal that you achieve that isn't superseded by a different goal. Now, I was like, I shot a wedding for $8,000. Now I want to shoot my next wedding for $12,000. You want to continue to kind of build upon your success. And I think one of the things that really happens with entrepreneurs or photographers is like, we always look at the finished product of people. Like we always think of, I'm going to use Beyonce. We think of Beyonce today.
Right.
We don't Beyonce down in Houston when she was struggling to get someone's attention other than her parents, or when she wasn't singing in church, or when she wasn't doing that. We're looking at Beyonce now. We're looking at the money she has now. We don't think about the struggle. We don't think about, we just want to get there to where she's at right away, without realizing that we're going to get some bumps and bruises on our way to getting to wherever we're going to. But you've got to stop looking at the finished product of other people, because all it's going to do is create envy and inactivity. Because like, man, why am I not Beyonce? I don't know why you're not Beyonce, because you haven't put in the work yet.
Right, exactly.
Beyonce.
Exactly. And, there's this quote that, we have the same 24 hours that Beyonce does. What are you doing with your 24 hours?
Oh, 100%. This is like always like, this is huge for me. When people are saying like, I'm not successful. I don't have, the same amount of weddings that I had last year. Like, what am I doing wrong? I can pretty much tell you what you're doing wrong. You're spending 3 hours a day on Facebook. I was like, I love you, but like, what are you, like, if you really take your 24 hours and narrow it down to, just like, 24 hours in the day is a great equalizer, right? We all spend about 8 hours sleeping, We spend about 8 hours working. That's 16 hours in a day. That leaves you 8 hours. You're going to eat. That takes 2 hours. If you got kids, you got to spend time with your kids. That's, another 2 hours. Now you're left with 4 hours in a day. And if you're spending 3 hours of that 4 hours left in a day,
Yep.
going around arguing with people on Facebook and not putting that time into your business, well, then, like, what are you doing? Like, there's all sorts of things that you can do, that you can use the tools that you have. You don't need people to come knock on your door. Go knock on their door.
Exactly.
Go small to go big. There's all sorts of things that you can do. One of the things that I talk about a lot at some of the conferences that I've spoken at, and I honestly mean this, is that, like, I think, like, so many people lose track of of where they're going. So they immediately want to be world famous, right? Like, everybody wants to be world famous. You can't be world famous because you're not famous in your own household. Do you know what I mean? You're not famous in your own town. You're not famous in your own city. You're not famous on your own block. Like, go small to go big. Like, do something that creates value for someone else in your community. Like, one of the things that, like, I tell people all the time is, like, not everything that you pick up your camera for has to be for money. Like, you can do things, like, I can tell you some of the things that I've done, like, that has really helped me is I had decided to pick up my camera and do free family sessions for a food shelter locally in my town. I've done free sessions for moms who are, like, trying to figure out, like, their next step. They're just getting off, like, just getting done from a horrible divorce, and they're trying to figure out what their next step is. I've done free headshots for people trying to get their up and coming. Like, the things that I've worked on political campaigns in Woodbridge, Virginia. I've done, like, all this stuff. And what that has done is it has steamrolled every time, like, giving back to my community. I have felt, or giving something away for a cause. I'm going to go back real quick. So every year, one of the things that I do is I pick a charity. It could be anything. And I have these, like, name your price sessions. Like, whatever you want to pay, all the proceeds are going to go to a local women's shelter to help women get back up on their feet. And I just give that money away. Like, not everything you have to do has to be for personal gain. But what that has done is it has allowed me to go small, work in my own community, and become, I don't want to say famous. I'm not famous by any means of the imagination, but it's given me a little bit of a following in my own community. So when we do these things in Prince William County, is the county that I live in, and they do these, like, awards, and there's, like, 5 photography awards, and I swept all 5 of them. So it's
congratulations.
Thanks. So it's not just, like, everything, like, yes, we all want to make money and we all want to provide for our families, but there's so many different ways that you can do that. So the thing is, like, something that you've done today, like, I'm not telling you just to give your services away for free. Find something that you support and raise money for it. Because the next time that person comes and they're thinking about a photographer, they're going to think of you first. Sorry, I can get on tangents, man. I'm rabbit holes. I can be that's all at once.
No, it's all good. No, I definitely can relate. It reminds me of, of being a photographer. Sometimes it can become mundane, right? Like, especially doing wedding photography, is the same thing every weekend. And you can get bored real quick, right? So I think that being able to do personal projects and having a cause to really have a purpose behind what you're doing. Because sometimes we can lose sight of that, and we can kind of take for granted the gift that we have been given as photographers to tell stories.
100%. I know. I completely agree with you. I think a large part of what we do in storytelling isn't just on a wedding day.
Right.
Like, it's like we forget, gosh, man, we forget that a wedding has about a 300-year shelf life. Like, those photos that you take are going to be, it's not just the day of the wedding. It's not just the couple. Those photos are going to be important to the parents. They're going to be important to the clients, to their grandparents, to their kids. If they decide to have kids down the road, to their grandkids. And then after about that, you'll be lucky to be sitting on somebody's shelf, right? Like,
right.
That's a long time. So that, like, when you're storytelling during the day, it's like you can't think about just that day. You can't think about just that couple. You got to be thinking about their grandkids. You should be thinking about that. Like, you should be thinking about the responsibility, that we have as photographers. And I think when you get in that rut of photography and you're doing it week in and week out, and you're just like, man, I'm just like losing my grip with what I'm going to do. I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over again. That always kind of gets me out of that rut when I think of the responsibility that I have. Yes, I want to create something that is meaningful. I want to create images that are going to be awesome for my website and for my social media. I go by the two for them, one for me kind of mentality. I'm going to shoot 2 photos for you, and then I'm going to try something. Hey, I know this is going to sound weird, but just trust me. Like, just give me this opportunity. And the thing is, this is like, if you bring that mentality I have a really good friend, Fraser Wasti, who states that every wedding is an experiment for him. And I think you have to kind of go into that to get out of that rut, to get out of the mundaneness of photography. And then also, it's like I feel like so many photographers only pick up their cameras when it's time to work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I have a personal project that is like super dear to me. I've been working on working on it for like the last year and a half. I've had conversations to have it turned into a book with Random House. I've had like all these like things, and it's something that like has nothing to do with wedding photography, but it's a place where I can go and that I can shoot and have a shared experience as a child of a mixed race marriage and a person, someone who's in a mixed race marriage, and thinking about like 2 years ago, I started a personal project called The 50, which is a celebration of Loving v. Virginia. It was 2 years ago. It was the 50th anniversary. Right. So I've been going around shooting mixed race couples. That's my thing.
Oh, I love that.
And trying to figure out like the blessings and the struggles of what it means to be in an interracial marriage today. Like, I mean, we're still in a lifetime to where that was like, once it was outlawed. But like, I find passion in doing that and sharing a certain different experience with other people. So I think that's really important for photographers, to pick up your camera, find a personal project, find something that kind of spikes that passion back into you.
I love that. And, it's really interesting to hear you share this here, because it really has opened my eyes and really caused me to think about what personal projects can I do?
Sure.
To really bring the spark back and my creativity back, right? I feel like a lot of times with weddings, we're kind of limited into the creativity that we can truly bring as photographers to a wedding day. But I think to feed that, if I tap into doing some personal projects, mm-hmm. I think I would feel a lot more fulfilled as a photographer, not just a wedding photographer. I think that a lot of times we get hung up on these titles and categorize ourselves with, I specialize in this or that, which is great, but I think if we think more broadly about the tool that we have, which is, our camera and photography, and a vehicle that we get to use to share whatever stories on whatever platforms or lift as we climb, and be able to bring others up.
Sure.
And to really encourage other people to know that you're more than just a wedding photographer. You're more than just a family photographer, event photographer. But as a person, you really have to dig deep into you. What do you like to do? And stay connected to that, because I think that will really help to really spark some more creativity and be able to take back whatever personal projects you're working on. You can take that back with a fresh perspective to whatever genre of photography that you're photographing.
Oh, 100%. I think in order to keep that creative spark, like, personal projects are like super key in what we do. And it's not just, I think that, gosh, like, there's this, we are like this quote that I'm probably screwing this quote up, but there's like something. So Reggie Jackson, who's a former baseball player, used to play for the New York Yankees and the Oakland A's back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He owns the record for strikeouts, right? Like he has like 2,600 strikeouts in his career. But when people talk about Reggie Jackson, they don't talk about his strikeout totals. They talk about all the home runs he hit. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think like one of those things that like we are so afraid to try something new or to try something creative because we're afraid of failing.
Right.
That we never actually start. So it kind of goes back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier. You know, you're like, yeah, I wanted to do something. I didn't know where I was going to go with this podcast, but like I was just going to give it a shot.
Right.
And the thing is, this is like, you'll never know how well something can go for you unless you give it a shot. So the same thing goes with personal projects, you know, as photographers or as creatives. I don't even consider myself to be a photographer. I consider myself to be a creative. Like, like I create for a living. It can be via podcast. It can be with my camera. It can be by creating a film. It can be like by creating IGTV videos. Like I have the strive to want to create. And I'm also not afraid of failing, you know, because I failed before, man. I've slept in my car.
Right.
It feels like I've been fired. I know what that feels like. Do you know what I mean? So like trying something new isn't scary for me.
And one of the things that I like to go by is fail early and fail often. Right. Sure. You know, you talk about failing and it makes me think about some of the failures that I had in my business, and I still face failure now. Mm-hmm. But I'm not afraid of the word no. I really don't care. And the point is, I think that a lot of times we get in our mind and we talk ourselves out of doing something before we can actually do it. So we have a lot of great ideas, but when it really comes time to execute, we are afraid of what other people may think about what we put out into the world. And, you know, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but sometimes we let fear get in the way of what we're really passionate about or what we are called to do. We will really never know our full potential unless we just do it.
Yeah, dude, I tell people this all the time. You know, imagine if Martin Luther King would have said, no, I'm not going to do this today. This isn't me. I'm not going to fight for rights for my people. You know, imagine if Abraham Lincoln would have said, nah, not today. Yeah, I'm not going to sign this sheet of paper. Imagine what if Rosa Parks would have been like, yeah, I'm going to get up from this seat. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are all these things that people have taken the courage and the strength to do for us. Do you know what I mean? Our parents, you know, regardless of how your relationships are with your mom or your father, they try to the best of their ability to navigate us in one way, shape, or another. And the great thing about being a child of people who make mistakes and people who have L's is that we get to learn from them. Not only do you get the ability to learn from people who have made the mistakes, you have the ability to not make that mistake again. So this is like, you know, one of the things like I said, like in my bio, before I'm a photographer, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm a friend. Those are three things that I take very seriously. My father and I don't have a great relationship today. We hardly ever talk, if at all. I think I may have spoken to him like once in the last 10 years. And prior to that, maybe 3 times 10 years prior to that. But the thing is, that mistake that I had as a child with my father is very strong in my identity today as a father. Like, I know that I am not going to make those same mistakes because I've seen those mistakes made. And the same thing goes for like photographers. You know, like the thing is this, if you're not looking around your life and finding sources of inspiration, then we're doing life all wrong, right? Like I feel like my bad relationship with my dad has helped bring me to where I'm at today. It's helped me bring the father that I am today. You know, like I tell people this all the time. Like I know I've said this, but like I was just talking to a friend the other day. Like, being married and staying married is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I've realized, and I tell this to my wedding clients, that there is no such thing as 50-50. We have been sold a false bill of truth. And, like because a marriage, and when I sit down and I talk to my clients, I think this is probably one of the reasons why I book the clients that I do, is I tell them that there's no such thing as 50-50, that there's always going to be one person giving a little bit more than the other person. That thing is going to swing 95-5, 65-40, 65-35. It's going to be 70-30, 60-40, 30-70. It's like that. The equilibrium is going to always swing back and forth. Where one person's always giving a little bit more than the other person. You just don't want to start from a deficit.
Right.
If you're both only giving a total of 95%, or you're only giving a total of 90%, then something's going to fail and you're going to have a breakdown in your relationship with your spouse. And I've had those breakdowns in my marriage and in my personal relationships with people. But I realized that, like, if I can give you in this podcast, people who are listening, all of me, and share with you my losses and my wins, then you can learn from them. Like, I'm by no means of the imagination a perfect person, but I love people.
Yeah.
And I think to be a wedding photographer, you kind of have to love people, because you're going to meet so many different types of people.
You're doing it all wrong if you're just doing it for the money.
Dude, that's funny you mentioned that. I was legit getting ready to post something about that this week on my IGTV channel and on my YouTube channel. I was like, if you're doing it just for money, if this is the only reason why you're in this game, then do us all a favor and get out. We don't need you. And I mean, these are like the tough conversations that I feel as creatives that we have to have with people who are getting into this. Well, I just want to make a little extra scratch. Dude, like, you know what? Doing it for just a little extra scratch is what gives those of us who are in it for the long term, those of us who are passionate about it, a bad name. Because you're probably delivering a subpar product. Not only are you delivering a subpar product, you're not doing it because you genuinely understand the responsibility of what it takes to be a photographer. These are people's memories. And money is important. And I love money just like the next person. And I need money to pay my bills and to make sure my kids have clothes for school and food and all this other stuff. I'm by no means a starving artist, so I don't even want to give the fabrication of that lie, but I don't want you in this if you're doing it for just scratch, for a little extra spending money on the weekends, because you're the reason why we have to answer 20 questions from the knot. Client goes like, what should I ask my wedding photographer? You're the source of those questions.
Exactly, because you're doing yourself a disservice if you're doing that.
100%.
I mean, we have to work 10 times as hard to prove ourselves as a photographer for the people who just doing it for a little scratch. This does not work like that, because again, we stay up at night
100%.
Hours. It reminds me of back, I had a business before my business now, and we talked about failing. And one of the ways I failed early and often was that I had a business before this one, a photography business that failed miserably.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I didn't have all the resources I have available to me now.
Sure.
So now it equips me to be a better photographer. So when people say, oh, I just want to do it for the money, what have you gone through to really show that you're really passionate about what you're doing and that you really want to serve the clients that you have been entrusted with?
100%. And the thing is this, and this is I would be lying to anyone if I tell people that I don't really enjoy failing. Because I think the thing is this with failing is it's okay to fail as long as you fail up and don't fall down.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I think the thing is this is there are going to be times where people are going to tell you no. There are going to be times where your business may go bottom up. There may be times that things just don't work out the way that you thought it would.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is you've learned something as well. You've learned what not to do the next time. and this is just like drawing inspiration from the things that are around you. I think is super, super important. I think doing photography as a living and being someone who's done it full time for a couple of years now, well, several years now, and realizing that some years aren't as good as other years. Right now, I'm in a really good space. I'm almost completely booked for 2020, and we're halfway through 2019. I get online and I see people are like, are your bookings down this year? And everyone, like, I feel like people get online to share misery, and misery finds company. Everybody wants to talk about how bad things are, but like I wanted to change that paradigm, and like I try to only communicate positively online. In groups, I try to like encourage people that what we're doing is, we go back to looking at Beyonce now. We want to be where I'm at now. People want to be like where I'm just going to use this name, Jonas Peterson, who's like, world famous, shoots all over the place. They want to be Jonas Peterson now. They don't want to put in the work today. So if you put in the work today, then you can be somewhere 10 years from now, 5 years from now. Nothing of value comes fast. And that this is like, and if you value this, if you value what we're doing, it's not going to come fast. Is there, and are there overnight successes? Nah, not really. There's no such, like, dude, for every one person that you think was overnight successes, 10 to 15 years of hard work to get to where they put themselves in a situation to where they could get some notoriety.
Right. You're just seeing the now. You're just seeing the now. You're like, oh, wow, they blew up overnight. Well, actually, I've been working really hard at this for the last 10 years.
Oh, 100%. Like, dude, it's like, I was talking to a friend the other day about Little Nas X, right? And the things that we can learn from the song that he just released. Now, he's young, but he was working hard at this for years prior to finally hitting, right? Like, and then he hit, and it was just everywhere. And he took a very unconventional, and this kind of goes back to like the business of photography, right? He took a very unconventional route to where he got to. He went country. Now tell me, what rapper do we know goes country first? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
he does a really great job at it. Like, he's amazing.
100%. Like, and Little Nas X can tell you so much about the creative process. He saw an area that was underserved by minorities. Like, dude, like country music is 99 minus Darius Rucker, who was Hootie and the Blowfish before he ever did country. So this is kind of going back to like Little Nas X is like, like 99% of country music is served by one race. He decided, well, if I can make this country ditty and get notoriety here, then I can get the notoriety from my peers who are there. And and to me, I think that's like, it's genius thinking, to be 100% honest. Like, why are we all trying to take the same path to success? There's so many different paths to get there. Like, I think we get online and we say, well, so-and-so told me that I need to do this.
Yeah.
And then I need to raise my pricing after this. And then I got to take step 2 and then step 3 and step 4 and step 5. And then I'll make it. Nah, dude, there's so many different ways to get there.
It's not a one size fit all situation. It just doesn't work like that. And I think that you said something that was really key, and I want to go back to it because I don't want people to miss it, that you can tap into an underserved market. Mm-hmm. As a photographer, there are so many different ways that you can use your gift as a photographer and tap into markets and populations that people aren't serving.
100%. But there's a lot of things. I think people are all thinking about doing the same thing, but they forget the reason why you got into photography is because you felt the need to create. So why don't you finish that word, create, and get creative? Do you know what I mean? Get creative with the process. Get creative with trying to think of ways to reach an unreached people group. Think of of a way to go to zig when everybody else is zagging.
Exactly. And it reminds me back in episode 1 of the podcast. Well, we talked about, Michelle and I talked about this book called Blue Ocean Strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage people, if you have not, and you need to definitely get this book. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy. And it basically talked about being able to tap into, again, markets that you're not tapping into. When you feel like you're in an oversaturated market, then where's that little silver lining where you can peep in and be like, oh, nobody's talking to that group of people. Let me go over there.
Yeah.
Because as they say, there are riches and niches, and you can get down so far in photography, it's not even funny. So I would encourage you, if you are feeling like you're in an oversaturated market and you feel like there is not a market for you, zag,
Yeah.
go left, go right, do whatever you got to do. But there's a lane for everybody.
There really is. I think the thing that you hear from a lot of photographers is that the entry point to this is so low. It's not. You still have got to learn how to do stuff. Yeah, it's not as difficult as it was 20 years ago when you had to shoot film. Digital cameras are plenty. There's a lot of digital cameras that you can buy and you can get into this industry. But the thing is, this is what story are you telling? Where's your niche? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, like my whole angle is business. And I was never a business major. I've found a remarkable way of staying afloat. And I think a large part of that has to do with like being homeless, of being ashamed of, people seeing me in my car. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to get resourceful. And when you're trying to be resourceful and you're trying to become something different, you have to kind of find a different way of going about it. And I think the thing is that like, I don't want to say that like I learned from the streets. That would be a lie, but I learned from sleeping in the car. Like, one of the things I said to myself the last night before I got my apartment is that I would never put myself in this position again.
Mm-hmm.
I said, like, and from there on out, like, not only now that I've kind of figured it out a little bit, but not only am I going to take myself to a higher level, I'm going to take all my friends with me too.
Exactly.
So let's talk about a couple of creative ways that I can help people find a little business. If you heard earlier, like, one of the things that I said is, like, if you're just getting started, or if you're struggling, or if you're still trying to figure, like, you can't find clients, let me tell you, the Craigslist gig section is your best friend. And I mean this. It's like, I don't necessarily use it anymore, but if you're willing to shoot a bar mitzvah, if you're willing to shoot a 90th birthday party, a family reunion, if you're willing to photograph someone's wedding, if you're just kind of starting out and you just need clients, that's probably one of the ways that I would start out first. And if you're really experienced at this and you want to go out and really find some clients where you get to pick and choose who the people are that you photograph, dude, make some connections on Instagram, man. Like, hashtag search some stuff. Like, if you want to find, I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. If you hashtag search engaged, you can find all the newly engaged folks with the hands up in the air showing their engagement ring. And then you can go through and you can hand pick who you want to email, who you want to direct message. It all goes down in the DMs. Like, drop them a DM and be like, hey man, I'm a photographer. I'd love to photograph your wedding. Here's my portfolio. It gets you out of the shooting your friends and family. Go out and find some business. Like the thing is that, like, you don't have to sit around on your hands waiting for business to come to you. Go out and find it.
Right. You definitely got to create your own opportunities. And I think sometimes we forget that if a table is not available for us to come sit at, we need to create our own tables.
Oh, dude, pull a seat up.
Pull a
seat up and sit down. You know what I mean? Don't wait for it. So like, one of the things, there's a Facebook group, and if you're listening to this podcast, I would suggest that you join it. It's called Tamaya Colvin Education. It is an amazing place for creatives. She also has a workshop called the Cookout, which I was a keynote speaker at last year. That was the first year that it happened. It was in Atlanta. This year it's in New Orleans. I'm not speaking at the one in New Orleans because I already had a prior speaking engagement by the time she released the date. So I couldn't.
Yes, that's where I remember you from. Okay,
Yeah.
now I know. I was like, oh, you look so familiar. That's
Yeah.
where I first saw you.
Yeah.
Last year on the flyer where she does, the speakers coming and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I remember your face from.
Yeah, I was the keynote speaker for the first annual Cookout. And a large part of that was because what I did is I found someone and I invested in them. I found Tamaya and she was starting a group, and I think I was like member number 3. I had no clue where this was going to go, but I said, "Hey, I'm all in. I don't know what you need from me. I don't know what I can provide. I don't even know if what I have to say carries any weight, but I'm all in." So I believe in investing in people because I enjoy spending time with people. I've done this with lots of people. I paid for two people to come to the Cookout, like out of my own pocket, because like I was invested in its success. And now here we are. She's in year 2. She's got a bigger lineup of speakers and a bigger aspiration of getting more people to this Cookout. And she's sold it out twice, opened up more seats, sold it out again. So like I'm all for it. It was the same thing with Michelle Harris. I was like, hey, what can I do to help you? Help me help you. What can I do? So like in TCE, to my Colvin Education, I used to do these things called 10 Tip Thursdays, where I would just like have these ramble thoughts on business and ways to kind of get out of your comfort zone and do some things. And from that 10 tip, the Cookout was born. I was like, well, like what's stopping you from saying yes today?
Yeah.
Are you afraid of failing? Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Well, like literally, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? People are going to know that you failed. We fail at everything. People fail all the time.
All the time. Don't be afraid of failure.
Yeah. So like, I mean, what's the worst thing? You get back up and you try again.
Real quick, not to cut you off, but because you just talked about it, so I want to bring it up. Mm-hmm. So your Tim Tip Thursdays, mm-hmm. You have them on IGTV and your YouTube, right?
Yeah, I had them on. I just, so I was doing these Tim Tips for a solid year plus in TCE, to my Colvin Education Facebook group. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to just make I'll make a couple of videos and kind of see where this goes. So I made a couple of videos and those kind of got good responses. And then I was like, well, why am I only sharing it in just this group? So that kind of bled over into my IGTV. And then it bled over. I was like, well, someone's like, why don't you start a YouTube channel, Tim? I was like, who wants to listen to me talk on YouTube? So I started a YouTube channel. I've only had it for about 3 or 4 months. I'm still trying to figure out that ways to update it regularly. But yeah, you can find my Tim Tips and my random ramblings on business and my camera reviews. I'm a film shooter, so I still shoot film. I try not to pick up a digital camera unless I'm recording something. I don't even let my kids pick up a digital camera. They only shoot on film.
Oh, wow.
So my oldest son, he wants to be a photographer as well, doesn't own a digital camera. I won't let him shoot with his cell phone. He has to shoot with a film camera. I got him a little point and shoot film camera that he shoots with. Every now and then I get the privilege of taking him on a shoot with me, and I'll give him this little film camera, like, go shoot whatever you want, bud. And then we critique that. So yeah, so you get to see my film camera reviews and stuff like that. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Okay. And then I'm going to shamelessly plug some of my favorite Tim Tip Thursdays that I found on your IGTV. Stop trying to eat the whole elephant all at once.
Yes. Stop doing that. You're going to choke yourself and die. The easiest way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And that goes for the creative process. Like take it one step at a time. Realize that you're not going to get there all at once. Yeah, absolutely. Don't bite the whole elephant all at once.
And then I'm going to say 2 more, and I want to hear your thoughts on that. Stop looking at the finished product.
Oh, yes. Yes, please. Yes. That was kind of, this is going to be weird. I'm never going to say anything that I don't need to hear myself. I feel way more often than not that I catch myself looking at other people's finished product, and then it causes me to be inactive because I'm like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as them. My work's never not that good. So if you stop looking at the finished product and you just work with blinders on, don't look left and right, only look forward. Don't look backwards either. I've gotten into trouble looking backwards too. Only look forward. You will find yourself in a much better headspace.
And my third one is turning L's into lessons.
Yes. It's like in being able to embrace the suck, right? You're going to lose. We all are going to lose at some point in time. And you got to turn that L into a lesson. So that whole thing kind of came from, I was listening to, maybe it was Chance the Rapper. And I was just like, I don't know, maybe I was like at the gym or something like that. And that lyric just kind of just screamed out at me. And it was like, dude, turn your L's into lessons, right? Every time you lose, learn something from it. And if you learn something from it, then that will not be a loss for you. It will turn your L's into wins, turn your L's into lessons. Is trying to figure out how you can lose and yet win in the long run.
I mean, this conversation has been so rich. I don't want to end the conversation, but I will wrap up because I want to respect our time. But one of the things I do want to end on is, can you leave us with 3 winning strategies?
Oh, yes. I can leave you on 3 winning.
Or more, however many you feel it's
Okay. So number 1 winning strategy, get off of social media. It's destroying your dreams. And I mean this in the most loving way possible, from one creative to another. Social media is great, but it's also keeping you away from accomplishing your goals. And if you're going to be successful, social media can be a part of that, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you do. I'm currently taking a month off from social media, maybe longer. I'm not on Facebook. I've been posting through a program called IFTT, If This Then That. So some of my content is you're still seeing some of my content, but I'm not engaging with anyone. Don't get wrapped up into that kind of stuff. Another winning tip is invest in others. You can't do this on your own. We are a community, and don't be afraid to ask a question to someone. Don't be afraid to build relationships with people. Don't be afraid to say yes to someone who asks you to do their podcast who you've never met in person.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. We are built for relationships. Not to get my religion on or anything here, but God made Adam. He looked at Adam and said, yeah, that ain't right. That ain't good enough. So he made Eve, because we're built for relationships. Final winning tip, number 3, is get offline and get to meeting people in person. I am telling you, I've booked so many weddings, from shaking hands and kissing babies with friends, hanging out with them, grabbing Starbucks, grabbing coffee. It doesn't have to be Starbucks, man. It could be Pete's Coffee. I don't care, whatever it can be tea. It can be caramels. You can sit around and just eat caramels and just talk to people face to face, look them in the eye, hear what they have to say, build personal relationships with people. I promise you, personal relationships are far more advantageous to you than online relationships.
Yep.
Take those online relationships and get to meeting people in person. I promise you, that in itself will get you in. We're all rabbit hole here real quick. We all have the shame shared experience, and it'll be awesome to be able to get to share that with someone over coffee or a cup of caramels or popcorn. But definitely get to meeting people in real life. And don't be afraid to give them a hug when you first meet them. I don't care if they don't have personal space. Hug them, shake their hands. And one other thing, I'm gonna fourth thing. Celebrate other people's wins.
Yes, that's major.
Celebrate other people's wins. Don't be a hater. I say everything goes down in the DMs. I want you to find 5 people today. If you're listening to this podcast, I don't care who it is. Find 5 people who is doing good work, that you're seeing their work, and just write them a word of encouragement. Because I tell you what, they may not know that they're doing good work. They are just probably going through the same rat race that we all are in. But words of encouragement keeps people going. So I'm going to encourage you to encourage others and, pay it forward.
This makes me so happy. I'm so excited that I reached out to you.
Thanks so much.
And I hope to meet you in real life over tacos very soon.
Yes, tacos. And, I love me some tacos.
And before we leave, can you share with us how we can stay connected with you?
Sure. So you can follow me on Instagram, Tim Riddick. Just like the Chronicles of Riddick is how you spell my last name. You can definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's at, I think it's like Mr. Tim Riddick, because I set it up like 10 years ago and never used it. So I just kept the name because I think it's funny now. And you can also connect with me on, Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. Tim Riddick, everywhere it's pretty simple stuff.
And also my favorite, his IGTV stories. Please check those out. Always going to be in your ear about that now, about keeping that up, because I thoroughly enjoy your Tim Tip Thursdays on IGTV. So I can't wait for that to be on and popping. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate you.
Oh no, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Sorry, I went a little bit longer, but I'm a talker.
It's okay. You're talking to a talker too. So it's all good. All good.
Awesome.
Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Purpose to Create podcast. Share, like, comment, or review this episode. Check out the show notes at www.purposetocreatepodcast.com and connect with us online at Purpose to Create.